What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Blizzard is making a pretty significant change to the competitive ladder starting with Season 8. This is going to have a major impact on quite a few players, particularly anyone who is a one-trick. Alright, so these are some pretty significant changes, and it's not going to fix everything, but it's definitely going to correct some of the problems that we have. So over on the official Blizzard forums, Scott Mercer, who is the principal designer for Overwatch, made a pretty lengthy post explaining all of the changes that are going to happen in Season 8, which starts January 2nd. So the first thing he talks about is limiting the skill rating variance for teams. And what this is basically you can have really high-ranked players and they queue up for a match, and they have to wait a long time because there aren't that many people up in that bracket. And what it ends up happening is the longer they wait, the greater the variance becomes. And that means, you know, at first it's trying to only match them against top 500, and then it spreads it out a little bit to Grandmaster, and then a little further to Master, and then a little further than that to Diamond. And then, I mean, I've even seen some screenshots where you see top 500s playing against Platinum rank players, and that's because it allowed for this variance if the person had to wait a certain amount of time. And what they're doing is they're severely restricting that, so now the people who are at the higher up brackets or the very low brackets are going to have to wait a little bit longer to find a more appropriate match, so that you are placed against other people of a similar rank, instead of getting thrown into a game where one team just completely stomps the other. Now, he also pointed out that the existing group limits are still going to be in place, and that means that you can group up with someone else, even if they're a different rank, but there's going to be restrictions. So if it's Bronze through Diamond, then the difference in skill can be 1,000. If it's Master, then it's 500, and Grandmaster is 250. Alright, so now we're going to get into the really big change that they made, which is removing the personal performance skill rating adjustments for anyone that's Diamond and above. And he made a pretty lengthy post. I'm going to read some of it. He says, when you win a competitive match of Overwatch, you gain skill rating. And when you lose a match, you also lose skill rating. The amount that you gain or lose is calculated based on many different factors, and here's a quick list of some of the most important ones. And the first one is, if you have a higher than 50% chance to win a match, you gain less for a win and lose more for a defeat. And conversely, if you were an underdog in a match and you gain more SR for a win, and then you lose less when defeated. Also, new players experience both higher gains and higher losses than players who have been competing for a lot of matches. And lastly, he says you gain less SR for a win than you lose for a defeat, as you more closely approach the system's mathematical upper limit, which is 5,000 SR. So at the very high SRs, we're talking top level GM and top 500, you need to actually win greater than 50% in order to even keep your SR where it currently is. If you just win 50%, then you're going to start to slide down. He continues on and says, there's another factor in determining the SR change after completing a match, and that's a measurement of how well you personally performed during the match. If you perform well, then you gain more SR when you win, and you lose less when defeated. And the reverse is also true. So if you perform poorly, you gain less SR for a win, and lose additional SR when defeated. The personal performance adjustments have been controversial amongst the community for quite some time, especially since the calculations for these adjustments are not at all transparent. The adjustment does create a lot of positive system-wide effects, including rewarding players who make the effort to play well, punishing inactive players, and more quickly providing fair matches for new players or those who decide to play a new hero or role. So we spent quite a lot of time examining data over multiple seasons, checking a lot of math, reading a lot of community feedback, and then doing some deep soul searching about this, especially at the higher levels of online competition where every point of SR matters. We want players to not be distracted and worry about how to optimize around the personal performance adjustments. They should just be trying to win. So after we get back from the holidays on January 2nd, we're going to turn off the personal performance SR adjustments for players in the Diamond skill tier and above. Alright, so let's break that down and I'll explain what's good and what's bad about all of that. So whenever it comes to any sort of competitive ladder in really any game, there's really two different ways that you can award points or take away points. You either have kind of like a static system where every single match you win gives you like 25 points, and every match you lose takes away 25. And then you also have a different system which is more of a performance-based, which is kind of what Blizzard has been using. Now, I don't particularly like the static one for the simple fact that one person or a few people on the team can play exceptionally well, and yet they still get the same amount of points as the other person who was underperforming by quite a bit, and you had to like drag them across the finish line, and they were more of a detriment to your team than anything, but you still managed to win, so you get 25 points, but then that other guy also gets 25 points, and I don't really like that. But with the performance-based system, it's a lot more complicated because you have to have all these good systems in place where it will accurately identify who is actually playing really well and who isn't. Now, the problem with Overwatch is that Blizzard did a hilariously, breathtakingly bad job with their performance-based SR system. Besides all of the other bugs and stuff that I've talked about in the past where certain characters wouldn't get the amount that they were supposed to, other characters were getting too much, even now there's still kind of a residual problem with one-tricks where if you play the same character for the entirety of a certain match, you will get more points than if you switch to a variety of different characters. So switching during the match was actually punished under the personal SR system. And that was really, really bad because then you had people who just simply wouldn't switch off because you were kind of rolling the dice, and it was better to just stick to one character and maybe lose less than switching to another thing and ultimately losing a lot more because you switched in mid-match. So what does this mean for the different ranks? Well, if you're Diamond and above, this is amazing, because that means you can switch to anything you want as many times as you want during a match, and you never have to worry about the SR system trying to punish you for, that performance-based thing. So you can play the thing that you think will give you the best chance at winning rather than trying to stick to that one. So that is really, really good. Now, for anyone that's Platinum and below, this isn't going to have any effect whatsoever. You're still going to want to play one particular character during the entirety of the match in order to give you the best chance at getting more points. So anyone Platinum and below, you're still going to have to stick to one character for the entirety of the match. So that's what it's going to be for the majority of players. But for anyone that's a one-trick, it's going to be a different story. Because if you're Diamond and above and you're trying to one-trick, you are now going to kind of be punished by the system. So before, you would get rewarded by the system, but now you're going to be punished. Because of your refusal to switch off and play something else that would be more appropriate, you're not going to get that bonus SR anymore. So now, if you just lose because you refuse to switch, then you're just going to lose. Like, there's no extra little buffer that you're going to get, no bonuses that you get for playing exceptionally well on that one specific hero. So that's gone. So what's going to happen is you're probably going to see a lot of these excessively one-trick players who are in the really high brackets, and they're just going to start to fall and drop in rank. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of those Diamond one-tricks start to fall right into Plat. And for Platinum and below, the one-trick situation remains the same as it always has. Just like with everybody else, there's no incentive to switch during a match. In fact, you get punished for switching. So for one-tricks, Platinum and below is still going to be good. Diamond and above, not so good. Ultimately, I think this is definitely an improvement, although there's still a pretty significant problem with the matchmaker not taking into account what people actually play. And I'm kind of talking about a sort of role queue system here, even like a passive one, right? Because when you queue up and you have one team that has a balanced lineup, they have a couple of DPS, a couple of healers, and a couple of tanks, and then on the other team, it's like 4 support mains. That's not a balanced match. I don't care what the SR difference is, that is not a balanced match. So the matchmaker really needs to start taking some of that stuff into consideration as well, and then we're going to see some really good improvement on the competitive ladder. So what do you guys think about all these changes? Let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to check out my Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. The links are down below. Thanks for watching. Remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault. Also, special thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this all possible. If you'd like to see what kind of cool rewards you can get for supporting the channel, check the links on screen and down below.